Hello, everybody. Hi, I'm Stephen Sachs. I'm the artistic director of the Fountain Theater, and welcome to today's online reading of Detained by France-Luce Benson. Today's reading is part of the Fountain Theater's onstage online programming, which also includes Saturday Matinee, which is our weekly virtual community gathering every Saturday at 5 p.m., and Theater Talk, which is our one-on-one conversation with theater makers. Now, for today's reading, you can see us, but we can't see or hear you. So if you have any comments or questions, please enter them by using the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen if you're on Zoom, or by clicking the button, the comment button, if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube. Now, Detained is a docudrama based on real life interviews with detainees and attorneys, officers, and family members inside the US immigration system. And in addition to being a powerful drama, we feel that Detained also has educational value as well. And it's our plan to make Detained part of our Fountain for Youth educational arts program, bringing it to schools in Los Angeles next year in whatever format we're going to be permitted to do that. The coronavirus pending, whatever form possible. But if you agree that students should be engaged with Detained, you can help make that happen. Please make a donation by clicking the link that says Fountain for Youth in the Q&A box or the comment section. The running time of this reading is approximately 1 hour and 10 minutes with no intermission. And immediately following the reading today, there will be a discussion with playwright France-Luce Benson and Mark Dow. He is the author of American Gulag, Inside US Immigration Prisons. Also Amy Cohen, who's the co-founder and executive director of Every Last One, and Judy Rabinowitz, who is the deputy director of the ACLU Immigrants' Rights Project. So now, our live online reading of Detained.
In Ghanaian culture, dreams are sacred. My grandpa used to tell me that if you dream of someone giving you directions, it means that somewhere in your life, you have gone the wrong way. But the dream can set you on the right path. And my mom always told me that if an ancestor speaks to you in your dream, do not take that shit lightly. Well, she didn't say shit exactly, but you know what I mean. Dreams are a big deal for us. So when we came to America, I was so happy to discover that dreams are sacred here too. At least that's what I thought. I barely spoke any English, but I kept hearing the words American Dream on TV, in movies, at school. And see, I thought it was like an actual dream that people had like at night, you know? I was like, dang, everybody in America has the same dream at night? That's what's up. And I figured I'd know I was a true American when I had it. I couldn't wait. Every night I went to bed hoping and praying this would be the night I'd have my American dream, whatever that is. I'm the reason we came to America in the first place. If we stayed in Ghanaian, I would have died. I was just 3 years old.
I was 20 years old.
I was a teenager.
I was 6.
You first came to America in 1956.
I was born in Eritrea, but raised on the south side of Chicago.
I am not what they say I am.
I am a mother, an abuela.
A sister.
A United States veteran.
A mother.
My name is Claudia Slavensky, and I've been an immigration attorney for nearly 40 years. I graduated law school when I was 10. I'm actually an immigrant myself. Came to the US when I was 6 years old. I had blonde hair, blue eyes, and spoke zero English. They had no idea what to make of me.
Luis Zayas. I've been a mental health clinician for over 30 years, and I wrote a book about the long-lasting psychological effects of deportation on children. Oh, and I'm an immigrant. I originally came to the US in 1956, Richmond, Virginia.
Corpus Christi, Texas. Most kids there had never even heard of Argentina. But believe me, when they started calling me dirty Mexican, I was more confused than they were. Did they think everyone who spoke Spanish came from Mexico? I could laugh at things like that, you know, because I never imagined I would be sent away. It was so different back then. Even in 1976, when I started working for legal services in New Jersey, the Immigration Act guidelines was a little pamphlet, small enough to fit in your pocket. Now, it's a 3-inch book, and just look where we are.
I'm being held in Worcester County Jail.
Adelanto Immigration Detention Center in California.
Calhoun County Correction Facility.
Bergen County.
Passaic County.
Hudson County.
I remember that pamphlet. Can you believe there was a time when you could walk off the ship at Ellis Island, answer a few questions, you were welcomed in? And now we're deporting people who've been living here over 10,
20,
30 years.
And in those 10 years, we've gone to school.
College.
Graduate school. LLM from Columbia University. You surprised?
We had kids, grandkids, raised families.
I know these families well. I started my career in the immigrant community as a social worker and treated many of these families. I understand what they were going through because I was an immigrant myself and I moved around a lot as a child. My father was in the military. We lived in Virginia, Puerto Rico. We even lived in Germany for a few years, Munich. I remember visiting Dachau, which was not quite a museum back then. It was very much still a concentration camp, and it really left a mark on me. I had a visual, visceral image of what hatred was. Unfortunately, I'm seeing that hatred today in ways that are deeply disturbing.
He said I was undesirable.
Poor moral character.
They had her in chains.
I spent 3 years and 2 months in immigration detention.
7 months without my kids.
I don't even remember doing deportation cases back in the 70s. Up until 1996, the majority of my practice was dealing with immigrants, mostly women, who were domestic workers, housekeepers, childcare workers, and odd jobs that most American citizens would never think of doing, cleaning crap out of someone else's toilet, you know. I was always struck by the emotional sacrifices they made, caring for a stranger's family when they had families of their own in the Caribbean, South America, Mexico, who they had not seen in nearly a decade. And so most of what I did back then was helping people like that get permanent resident status. And we often succeeded. After which, of course, they'd finally get to visit their children or send for their children to come live with them here. It was all about reuniting families, and it was so satisfying. Now all we're doing is separating them. But it's like, I don't care who you are, where you come from, what language you speak, what God you believe in. There isn't a wall in the world that's going to keep a parent away from their child.
Police sirens.
I was on my way to work, 4:30 in the morning. I had a broken tail light and the cops stopped me. They took my ID and I knew something was wrong because he didn't write me a ticket, you know? I saw him calling on the radio, looking at my card. The minutes, felt like hours. I wanted to get out and ask him what was wrong, but I was scared to move. The next thing I knew, I was surrounded by 3 police cars. They took me to jail and I knew. I begged them to let me go. All I had was $25, but I told them to take it and my credit card. I said, take my ATM card. I even gave them the PIN number. I said, take all the money in my account, take everything. Finally, I called my oldest, Roberto. I didn't want him to worry, so I tried to stay calm and I never said goodbye. Even though I knew I'd be gone before he got to the station. The officer said, don't worry, it will only be a few days. I never thought that in a few days, I'd be back on a plane to Honduras. That was the beginning of the nightmare.
Sound of a Skype call coming in.
Hola familia, mis hijos. Hello.
Yeah. Hi, Mom.
What is it, yeah? Why don't you answer?
I was busy.
Where's your brother and sister?
Hold on. Lily, Rafi, it's Mom.
Hi, Mommy.
Lily, my love.
I'll be right back. Don't hang up.
I lived in America for 20 years. Lily and Rafi were born there. I had a job. I paid taxes, owned a home. We did trick-or-treating on Halloween and made big turkeys for Thanksgiving. And on the 4th of July, we went to the parade and waved the American flag, all like the other Americans around us, not knowing that it could all be taken away just like that.
Mommy, which one of these dresses should I wear to Jackie's quince?
Déjame ver los puestos. We do like this for hours. Sometimes they sit out here and I just stare at them staring into their phones. I remind them to eat. They send me pictures of the food in the fridge and I tell them what to do, what to make, how to make it. I tell them to show me the plate when they finish. I want them to eat. Sometimes I stay here all night. And in the morning, Roberto, you're going to go to school today, see? I told you your education is more
I gotta go to work, Mom.
any
Mom,
job.
Mom,
I don't
gotta
need
go.
you to send
I'm
Roberto.
going. Hey, bye, Mom.
I love you. Roberto worries about me. He says he won't go to school anymore because he wants me to quit my job. I have a job here, but it only pays $20 a week. Roberto makes more than that in an hour doing construction. He sends me money for food and clothes and whatever I need because he doesn't want me to work. He doesn't want me to have to walk home at night. It's dangerous here, especially for women. He worries about me. God, I think about them all the time. I can't eat. I can't sleep. I'm like getting crazy, you know. I get ideas about coming back whatever way I can. I mean, of course, I'm trying to come in a legal way, but if that doesn't work, I have to see my kids.
There isn't a wall in the world.
It's crazy, I know. I could die, but I'd rather die trying.
Don't answer it.
Free
Free
donuts.
Henry, get the door.
Henry?
My mom's not home right now.
No, you don't remember me. I'm Pastor Green from St. Brendan's. Well, we had some sandwiches left over from the fellowship this morning, and I thought you and your sister might enjoy them. We are so sorry to hear about your mom.
That morning, my mom insisted on changing my brother Henry's bandage before he left for school. He scraped his knee pretty bad playing ball, and she didn't want it to get infected. So after making us breakfast and packing Henry's lunch, she cleaned his wound, put on a fresh bandage, and made a full thermos of coffee to share on the way to work. And we were still, out the door by 7. It was like a week before 4th of July. People had red, white, and blue streamers and balloons covering their trailers. What a joke. Like, pride in our home, in our country means anything.
We are donating food tomorrow. I'll send you the good stuff. God be with you.
See, God ain't been with me in a minute, man. From 3-5 St. Brendan's and Value Right will donate free groceries to those affected by the... Okay, yeah, right. See, ain't nothing free in this country. That's the same shit they pulled on my mom. I don't care if it's the priest, if it's the church, man. I don't care if it's the Pope. I'm not coming out of this trailer for nothing, and there ain't nothing left out there anyway. It's like Fortnite. Whoever they didn't get at the raid that day left town right after. I guess they'd rather leave the country with their whole family than have the kids end up like me. Thank God I have my sister. She can be annoying, but she still got her job, and she takes care of us. And I hear her crying at night, and it's hard for her to have to go back to the nursery every day. And Stephanie and my mom, they both had jobs there. That's where the raid happened. As Stephanie said, they told them there were free donuts in the break room.
Someone posted flyers on the fence that said free donuts. We figured it was one of the managers. When we get to the break room, the place was crawling with ICE agents. They had on camouflage vests. There were dogs, helicopters flying overhead. Like, what did they think we were going to do? They put us into 2 lines, one for American citizens and one for undocumented. Even though I'm a citizen, I got in line with my mom because I wanted to know where they were taking her. I figured they'd have to release me later. But before anything, they looked in my wallet and found my social security card. So they pulled me out and I said, okay. Watching you put my mom in handcuffs, seeing all the people you helped raise me rounded up like cattle. You think I'll ever be okay after that? I tried not to cry because I didn't want her to cry. I was afraid she'd lose it, like pass out or something, but she was so strong. Before they put her in the van, she turned to me and she said, "Remind Henry to change the bandage tonight." That's the last thing I heard her say. It's been over a month now.
They took 114 people that day. That's 114 families that gotta suffer now. Who knows how many kids? Who cares, right? People who do this, they don't give a shit about what happens to someone like me. I heard this one kid from my class, Noel, he stopped eating after they took his mom. They had to send him to the hospital because he got so sick. This guy, Marco, they found him in his trailer. He hung himself. I heard them talking about the raid on the news, and all these people were saying, "Oh, this is un-American." Really? This is the only America I ever know. As long as I remember, I've been hearing about people disappearing like phantoms because of ICE. Only thing is now it ain't happening to them. That shit is happening to me.
The first night, we drove all the way to the detention center in Port Clinton to see if she was there, but they said they couldn't tell us anything. We drove back the second night. They told us she was inside, but that we couldn't see her. The next night, they stopped me at the gate. I said, "I'm an American citizen and I have a right to see my mom." But they wouldn't even let me drive in. I keep wondering what they saw when they looked at us. Like, could they see that my eyes were swollen and red from crying and driving all night? Could they tell that Henry hadn't eaten in days? Hey, officer, who benefits from this? I deserve to know. Is it the taxpayers who pay for these raids? Or is it all the American workers whose jobs we stole? We didn't steal those jobs, okay? We're the only ones who do those jobs. Ohio announced a crisis work shortage because there was like 15,000 agricultural jobs that hardworking Americans refused to take because the pay was so low. Not for me, not for my mom, or all the people in our community who worked at Russo's nursery. We didn't care how much it paid. It was honest work and we worked hard. Russo depended on us, but they lost half their employees in that raid. But hey, they deserve it, right? Small family-owned business, owners born and raised in the USA, fuck them, right? That's what they get for hiring those people. Just a bunch of MS-13, cartel, killers, and rapists, right? Did you ever think that maybe all those people who you took that day, all 114 of them were all just hardworking people making $9 an hour? $9. Fuck them. No, fuck you.
I still get a nightmare. It was May 18th, 9:15 in the morning. I was about to take a shower when I heard there was a man at the door, an officer. He said he was from ICE.
ICE!
Can I help you?
Yeah, I'm looking for Ms. Melida Ruiz.
I let him in. I thought it was about my application for citizenship, but he said,
I got a warrant for your arrest.
"What?"
This is a removal proceeding in the matter of Melida Ruiz, A7292089.
It must be a mistake.
My mom is everything in the world to me.
Will the respondent please step forward?
My hero, my homegirl, my rock. She's my light.
Mis hijos son todo para mí.
All right, you're seeking cancellation of deportation and a request for asylum. Is that correct?
Yes.
You're seeking asylum now. Are you in danger?
Well, yes and no. You see,
I need a definitive answer. Are you afraid or not?
My mom ain't afraid of nothing.
Mercedes.
What? Tell them what you do. Tell them who you are.
You see, when I came here from Guatemala, I was a teenager.
A badass teenager.
Mercedes, por favor.
Sorry.
And I worked as a cook, a cashier. I cleaned buses.
Not that shit.
Mercedes.
You're taking too long. You know what my mom does? Okay, she's a roofer.
A roofer.
You hear that? Say it again, mommy.
I'm a roofer.
What? She's a what?
A roofer.
What?
Okay, that's enough. After I had Mercedes, I went to trade school for carpentry, and that's how I got into
roofer, yo.
a roofing.
A motherfucking roofer.
It said this.
Sorry. She's hella badass, right, Ma?
It's nothing really. I know insulation, put flashing, grab the mob, and anything you want to know about roofing, ask me. I know it all. I did the roof at the new Yankee Stadium. I did all the New York City schools, the prison here in Bayonne, Kennedy. You name any building I went to the top, and I've seen every inch of this city.
She literally built this city.
I'm good at what I do. I'm just as good as any of the men. And the men on the job, they all respect me. I'm one of them.
And have you ever seen a roofer who looks like this?
I used to think that my kids were ashamed, you know? Maybe they wish I did something more feminine, more professional, intellectual, but actually they love it. I hear them talking to their friends.
Hey, you know what my mom does? She's a roofer.
Oh, no way, BS.
No, I'm serious. I'll show you. Come with me. We'd skip fourth period and I'd take them to wherever she was. Hey, look up there. All the way up. 14 stories high.
16.
18.
20
stories high. That's my mom up there.
Whoa.
Is that you? Why are you not in school? Don't make me come down there.
Oh, shit.
Yo, your mom is badass though.
I told you, she ain't afraid of nothing.
But that day, May 18th, 9:15 a.m.
That was the first time that I ever saw my mom scared.
At first, I was confused. Like, I wasn't even worried, you know, because I got a green card. And I've been in this country, like, for 30 years. 30 years. All of my family is here. My brothers, my sisters, my mom, uncles, nephew, they are all here.
Don't matter.
Green card don't matter? Passport? Not even the citizenship letter? I just passed the test. I was about to become a U.S. citizen. I gave him everything. He was like... more confused than me.
Just make a call. Just give me a second.
I heard him on the phone talking to his supervisor. I grabbed my Bible while he was on the phone and I prayed so hard my hands sweat into the Bible.
Hey, you sure you didn't make some mistake? But she got papers, green card, passport. She even got... Hey, I'm sorry. I got to take you in.
What? No, why?
You've been flagged. You got a record.
What?
1997.
You're kidding me.
In 1997, you
fell in love. Oh, young, stupid, crazy love. I was driving with my boyfriend at the time, Mercedes' father. The police stopped us. For what? I don't know. But Ramon had a stash in his pocket. And because it was my car, they charged both of us. We hired a lawyer. Lawyer says, plead guilty, no jail. We paid some fines and it was over. That was that. Case closed. Never came up again. I've been working. Never came up. I joined the union. Never came up. I thought it was over because it never came up again. I never thought that so many years later, 3 kids later, a grandson on the way later, I raised a family. I bought a home. I went to school, paid taxes, paid my dues. And I became a roofer.
My mom is my hero, my rock. She's...
Look, don't worry.
Don't worry.
It won't be long. You'll see the judge right away, as soon as possible.
It was 2 weeks before I saw a judge. 2 weeks. 2 weeks, my kids without their mom. After that, I was in detention for 7 months. 7 months.
I was 4 months pregnant when they took my mom. I had my baby while she was in detention, alone. And I think he knew, my Christopher, that when he was born, my heart was broken.
All I could think about was my kids, especially the little ones. Did they eat? Did they put on warm clothes, brush their teeth, do their homework? Oh, they suffered so much.
This suffering she's talking about, it's corrosive to the kids' mental health and well-being. In cases like Melita or Inez, the children experience what we call complicated grief or ambiguous loss. Because unlike the death of a parent, which is final, detention has no clear end. In an actual death, you go to the funeral, a memorial, there's closure. But in cases of detention and deportation, there's no closure, no real goodbye, and no indication of how or when this will end. When there's so much uncertainty and ambiguity, it's actual torture.
We had to wait 90 days to get approval for visitation. Then when you finally get to go, you got to wait hours and hours and hours, all for 20 minutes. That's how long we got to see her. I just wanted to hold her hand and squeeze it like she used to do for me when I was scared, but...
No touching.
It wasn't allowed. The worst part was when I went to see the judge.
Oh, I'll never forget that day in court.
It was the most horrifying scene I've ever seen in my 40 years as an immigration attorney. The physical setup of the courtroom was such that, well, there's no back hallway. So they bring her in through the waiting room where her children are sitting, waiting for the court proceeding to happen, waiting to find out if their mom will get to come home. And so Melita comes through that room in an orange jumpsuit, shackled.
At the hands.
At the feet.
At the waist.
Oh my God. They had her in chains like an animal.
You know, in cases of divorce, in family court, it's all about the best interest of the child. That's what determines whether the child goes with one parent or the other. And the other parent cannot move out of state, or else they're relinquishing custody or something, right? So it's always the child that's at the center. In immigration court, it's the undocumented immigrant who's at the center of the case. And the child, who is often an American citizen, happens to be an accessory, just part of the furniture in the room, collateral damage.
And I'm looking at this woman, this mother in chains, her kids just devastated and alone. And I'm thinking, this is the pit. We are at the bottom. How did we get here? When I was working for legal aid in the 70s, most of the people I served came here on a tourist visa, and then they'd overstay their visas to work. They were never considered illegal, certainly not criminals. After 5-10 years in the country, they could just regularize their status, no big deal. We did it all the time.
Immigration wasn't as heated an issue back then.
If we really want to know how we got here, we have to go back to
1996.
Before that, the 80s. That's when the whole war on crime thing started. And there was this growing nativist movement, right? More and more grumbling about illegal immigrants. In California, for example, there was this backlash against the growing Mexican population. People saying things like,
well, I'm not against Latinos. I'm just sick of the illegals.
What the hell does that mean?
It's code.
Exactly. Illegal became proxy for
Mexicans,
Africans,
Muslims,
race. I mean, now it's out all in the open, but back then, people try to keep their effed up ideologies on the DL. So they said illegals, when maybe what they really wanted to say was
rapists,
terrorists,
drug dealers.
And in California was a place where this kind of racial nativism grew because of the change in demographics there. And that demographic spread in the country. And before we knew it,
Bill Clinton is signing the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act of 1996, IRA.
I was on the Board of Immigration Appeals, and that's when everything became so political and divisive. Before IRA, if you'd been in the country a long time and had never been convicted of a crime, it was very unlikely you'd be deported. Because before 96, the statute was 7 years. So if someone had been living here for at least 7 years,
like the majority of my clients,
and had a home, a family, paid taxes, we concluded that the removal would result in extreme hardship to themselves and immediate family members. But the new laws took a much harder line. You had to be here 10 years. And if your children weren't born here, well, then they were not eligible for hardship argument.
Because losing a parent only hurts if you're born in America?
It was ludicrous to me. So I got pushed out of the Board of Immigration Appeals weeks after Ashcroft took over as Attorney General. and started serving as an immigration judge. And that's when I realized that the 96 laws dramatically restricted the ability for a judge to deliberate on the specific circumstances of the case.
That's right. It cut off any consideration of someone's accomplishments, their family, their assets, their life. It was dehumanizing. I had this one client.
Warren Joseph.
This man risked his life for this country. You think it made a difference? Despite all he had done, all that mattered was that they said he had what they called an aggravated felony. In immigration law, aggravated felony is a term used to describe a category of offenses that carry particularly harsh consequences for non-citizens. But despite how scary the term may sound, these crimes don't have to be aggravated or felonies to qualify. They can be minor. I mean, things like
stealing a book from the library. I'll tell you about that later.
But before 96, if they were facing deportation because of these crimes, they could still make a case for themselves.
And as judges, we could determine if they were deserving of a second chance. And in a large percentage of cases, they were.
But the 96 laws eliminated the judge's discretion. So now these aggravated felonies are like a death sentence. No discretion, no statute of limitations, and mandatory detention. So people like Warren spend more than 3 years in detention without the most basic right to a bond hearing. I can remember visiting clients in detention centers who had already served their time for these crimes. They would repeatedly say to me,
But they can't do this.
I already served my sentence.
It's not fair.
some of them had even taken pleas in exchange for a suspended sentence or time served, which amounted to a couple of weeks. Then God knows how many years later, they get picked up by DHS. Now they're in detention and there's not even a bond hearing. A lot of times they're in DHS detention for a longer time than their whole criminal sentence was. It's like you can never redeem yourself, even if you have a green card or you've been naturalized.
Serve and protect the country?
Doesn't matter.
Regardless of how much you love and honor this country?
Doesn't matter. You could be Mother Teresa.
Gandhi.
Jesus Christ, maybe.
Still won't matter.
What about a United States veteran? I pledge allegiance to the United States of America. Still, even after all I've been through, I still love this country. I'm like a foolish man in love with a woman that done betray his trust, but he can't stay away because she's so beautiful. And when he's with her, he feels so much hope, so much freedom, so much happiness. That's how much I love America.
When we moved here from Guatemala, it was like my dream came true. Finally, I could walk at night and feel safe. I loved how the leaves changed. I even loved the snow.
I love the supermarkets. What? I love food. I've never seen so much food in one huge building. So many colors, so many things to taste, things I've never seen before. God, I love the supermarkets here.
I love the flag. I remember the first day I held the American flag. I unfolded it and hoisted it up. And I remember the feeling like I went up with it. I never forgot that feeling. I came to America in 1987. I was 20 years old, and I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I wanted to feel proud. After 3 months in the country, I joined the U.S. Army. See, I was living in a dangerous part of Brooklyn. It wasn't like it is now. Now it's all five-star restaurants and $10 cups of coffee. But back then it was drug infested, gang infested. The military was a way out. So even though we were going to war, it seemed like a safer place for me. In 1990, I was activated to go to Iraq. My unit was a rapid deployment, so we were the first to arrive and the last to leave. I spent 8 years in the military. In those 8 years, I saw things I would not wish on anyone. My unit was literally a take no prisoners unit. Anybody, everybody who was not with us had to die. I won't tell you about the things I saw, things I did. I wish I could forget them. But at the same time, I would do it all again. It's crazy, I know, but For the first time in my life, I had purpose. But those 8 years took a toll on me. I came home with a herniated disc, Gulf War syndrome, post-traumatic stress disorder, and an addiction to drugs and alcohol. Between 1997 and 2001, I attempted suicide 3 times. I did pot, coke, and every pill prescribed to me by the military doctors. They were the worst. I got so addicted to those pills, but I couldn't always get them. So when I couldn't get pills, I took whatever else I could find. Then in 2000, I was moving from Oklahoma to live with my mom in New York and was arrested for transporting weapons. My weapons, ATF questioned me, I cooperated, and they sentenced me to probation. But about a year later, my drug addiction had gotten worse. My life became unmanageable, and in all the chaos, I moved out of my mom's and forgot to report the change of address to my probation officer, which was a violation of my probation. I was sentenced to 6 months. The day I was to be released from prison, INS told me I was being detained and would probably be deported. I thought it was a joke. I mean, maybe they didn't know I was a U.S. veteran, but they knew. It just didn't matter to them. 8 years. 8 years serving this country. It didn't matter. At my removal hearings, I was brought in my uniform. I brought my uniform with me. I presented it to the judge. Look, here on my right shoulder is the Brave Rifle. It represents the 3rd Cavalry Division from Fort Hood, Texas. And over here, this represents my unit and all the awards given to my unit. This is the highest award, the Army Commendation Medal. I got this for my exceptional merit of service in the Gulf War. This is the Army Achievement Medal. This is the Silver Star and 2 Bronze Stars. The silver represents 5, the bronze 1, 8. 8 achievement medals. I also got awards for being a weapons specialist, a good conduct medal, and my Army service ribbon. I even had letters from my chief, my fellow officers.
I showed all this to the judge, and none of it mattered.
I was denied. I spent 3 years and 2 months in the immigration service, immigration detention. You wouldn't believe how many U.S. veterans was in there.
Some of us fought and killed people from our native land.
Fought against our own people.
Because everybody loved America so much. We're like a bunch of pussy-whipped fools in love with the same backstabbing woman.
We actually thought of ourselves as American.
And now America is trying to get rid of us.
Some of us will be sent back to the very country they fought against.
It's funny. As a U.S. veteran, when I die, I'd be buried here in America. That means if I were deported, they'd have to transport me from Trinidad, my dead body, back to the U.S. to be buried. So I guess it's okay for me to die for this country. I just can't live here.
Stories like this drove me crazy when I was a judge, because IRA law has made it impossible for us to do anything. I mean, what did the judge say when you presented your medals?
He said I was undesirable.
What?
Undesirable to live in the United States. My heart dropped. How could he say that before my uniform?
Must have been distracted by the other uniform, the orange jumpsuit.
And brown skin.
Well, race was never the issue for me.
But it is an issue.
You might be right, but
Might?
what I'm trying to say here is, you know, when they have on the
Prison uniform,
yes, and
shackles.
Right. I try not to let it affect me, but of course, it sort of made them look like
criminals.
It made me sick to have them see them like that, and sometimes they weren't even actually there in court. It became common to have them appear via video conference, one right after another.
With this terrible concrete block wall background, like there's in some bad Lifetime drama.
Docket by docket. The first case could be a guy who's murdered somebody, which is rare. The next case could be somebody with a couple of DUIs. And somewhere in the mix, you get people like Warren or Melita or Inez. But they're all wearing jumpsuits and shackles. And the video wasn't very clear, so it made it hard to determine, hey, this is a good person. This is a
Decorated U.S. veteran.
A devoted father and husband.
My rock.
It's difficult to see all that when they're not there, you know? It's hard to see the person when you can't see the person.
Or maybe you just don't want to see. I was there. My uniform was there. My son was there. But I still spent 3 years and 2 months in immigration detention.
That's when I learned what detention was really like.
I spent 7 months in detention.
I spent 2 years.
2 weeks.
3.
The food in detention is shit.
When they wanted to punish us, they shut off the water so we couldn't take a shower.
We didn't even have showers. You could tell how long people had been there by the smell.
We once went 3 weeks without going outdoors.
The whole room was concrete, no windows.
No light.
The food was shit.
We know.
No.
Once, we were fed cup of noodles every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Our families are left behind.
And we are left without assistance, powerless to change the outcome.
If you went out and shot someone, you'd still have the right to an attorney, but in immigration detention, you don't. If you have the money, you can hire a lawyer, but many detainees don't have those kinds of resources. Unless they get connected with an organization that provides legal aid, they have no one there to advocate for them.
You become afraid to ask for basic human rights, edible food, medical attention, even toiletries.
Right? Toilet paper must be a priceless commodity because we're each only given 1 roll a week, and good luck if you run out.
It takes weeks, sometimes months to get medical attention.
There's a man here in his 40s. He's been bleeding from his rectum. He stays in his cell mostly because he bleeds through his clothes and is embarrassed to be around others. They ignored him. 6 weeks went by, still no doctor. He pleaded one day to a CO, and the CO told him to
Drop your pants. Show me.
He wanted this man bleeding and in pain and ashamed. He wanted him to drop his pants and to show him.
Whatever happened to him?
The CO said he would send a specialist. He's still waiting.
They use intimidation and scare tactics to keep them down and in fear.
They're trying to break us.
Yo, I heard people straight up die in detention.
And when they're in detention, they're also harder to represent. They're usually sent out of town. So they might live in New York, but they've been sent to Arlington. Then by the time you locate them, they've been moved to
Louisiana,
Florida,
Alabama. And most of the relief you're seeking is very documentation intensive. Like if your children were born here, they want birth certificates, report cards, medical records, tax records. It's so labor intensive, but it was worth a shot when we had judicial or prosecutorial discretion, because then we could make a case to an agency like ICE, and they could decide how harshly they would enforce the laws based on what we presented.
It was the best chance at avoiding deportation.
Obama may have been deporter in chief, but at least he gave us that. And it was huge. People didn't have to live in constant fear of getting deported like they do now.
Trump got rid of prosecutorial discretion when he took office. It was one of the first things he did. ICE agents loved it. They said it was like the handcuffs came off.
Now, no population is off the table. If you're undocumented, you have to live in constant terror, always looking over your shoulder, always worried.
I've been fighting my deportation for over 10 years now.
No matter who you are.
Husband, father, taxpayer, executive director of New Sanctuary Coalition of New York.
Yay.
The last one might be why I'm still in this mess. They don't care about any of those other titles. They don't even call me by my name, Ravi Ragbir. To them, I'm just A741333064. You ever see that movie Roots? A741333064. Be my new name now. And my green card don't mean shit anymore. I was a green card holder for about 15 years before this whole ordeal started. Worked in finance for what I thought was a lending company, but it was actually what they call a predatory lender. Some shit went down, stuff I didn't even understand myself. Not that I'm making excuses. I take full responsibility for my part in all of it, and I accepted the consequences. I was charged and convicted of approving loans, and I served my time. The day before I was finally going to be released from prison, this officer comes to my cell and he's like, "There you are, I've been looking for you." Looking for me? I've been like literally standing in the same exact spot 12 hours a day for the last 11 months. I knew something was up. Turns out they wanted me to sign some papers because they had an immigration detainer on me. Shit. This was bad, man. I seen it happen to others. They end up stuck in prison after their sentences is over, waiting for immigration to pick them up. Worst thing was, they didn't mind waiting in prison for ICE. I mean, we'd all rather go home, but between this place and immigration detention, we'd rather stay in prison. Unfortunately for me, day I'm supposed to be released, INS takes me to detention. Now all my family, wife, kids, everyone I know is in New York, where I've been living nearly 20 years. So where do they take me? Alabama. Even the ICE officers seemed confused. They took out their phones and started taking pictures of cows and sheep and shit. One says,
"Yo, where the hell are we?"
1 hour away from the nearest motel, 2 hours away from the nearest airport, which is over 1,000 miles away from anyone in the world who knows I exist. Who the fuck's gonna visit me here?
Seriously though, where the hell are we?
That's what they do. Send you as far away as they can. So your family can't visit, you can't get an attorney, you have to pay for a phone card to make calls, but you have no money. You're like banished. They try to wear you down, try to make you beg to go back to wherever you came from. They just want you out. I spent 2 years in detention. I tried filing a habeas corpus as an emergency document, and you're lucky if you get an answer in 6 months. Took me 2 more years. Took me 2 years. Some emergency. When I was finally released, it's as if I was still in captivity. I had a 12-hour curfew. I had to report 3 times a week to the ICE office. I had to wear an ankle monitor with a GPS enabled, and that GPS had to be charged every day. But see, I couldn't take it off to do it, so I had to like plug myself into the wall for 2 hours every day. Fuck that shit. I started charging it in my sleep, one leg off the bed, attached to the wall. It did make for some creative lovemaking. Don't get me wrong. I was happy to be released, but that monitor was like, I'll give you an example. We were celebrating our wedding anniversary, my wife and I, driving around looking for a place to eat. But see, I had boundaries, computerized boundaries. So we were driving around without realizing we accidentally changed counties or boroughs or what have you. And all of a sudden I hear,
You are leaving your master zone. You are leaving your master zone. You are out of bounds. You are out of bounds.
shit. I make a U-turn. I don't care if anyone sees me. I want this thing to shut the fuck up before ICE shows up to take me back to detention.
Congratulations, you have returned to your master zone, boy.
Huh? Having that thing on my ankle was making me crazy. I could hear it all the time.
You are out of bounds. You are leaving your master zone.
Every time I opened the front door.
You must not leave your master zone.
And then it was like I was hearing things, strange things.
Return to your master, boy. Return to the plantation.
I could hear it in my sleep.
Return to your master.
Everything I did.
Out of bounds.
Dumbass.
Piece of shit.
Go back to where you came from.
What was that? Wait, I could have sworn I heard.
Go back to your fucking country, you piece of shit.
It was torture.
Imagine 12 years of check-ins with ICE, 12 years looking over your shoulder, 12 years in and out of court. And just when we thought it was almost over, the current administration made things worse, much worse.
Last January, I reported to ICE for my check-in like I had done so many times for so many years. But this time, I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't understand. The ICE officer looked at me and said I was...
Denied.
When I heard the word...
Deported.
I fainted.
Ensemble crowds around him as EMTs carry him out on a gurney, escorted by ICE police officers.
Is it true that people die here? Shit. I had no intention of dying in that place. and have that be my last meal. In case you hadn't noticed, I'm kind of a foodie. I love cooking it, smelling it, holding it, figuring out new things I can do with it. I think what I love most about America are the markets. I'm serious. Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, Irwan's. I like the good stuff.
Freddie came to America when he was just 5 years old.
One of my first memories was going to the market with my mom and dad.
His parents had already been here for several years.
By the time I got here, they had their whole routine down. First, we'd get the basics, cereal, bread, milk, and what have you. And then there was this little veggie stand they liked. I think they knew the owner or something. Oh, and when things were good, we'd go down to Analitas for little treasures like fresh queso and pupusas. But my favorite was the big stores. Ralph's, Sprouts, Smart, Final. I never saw so much food in one place in my life. So many colors, so many things to taste, things I'd never seen before. I was obsessed. After high school, I started working for some catering companies. My plan was to save enough money to go to culinary school and eventually become a chef. That sure as hell wasn't going to go back to El Salvador. Not to live anyway. I mean, I figured maybe when I got my green card, I'd go visit just to find out about my roots and all that. But I'm interested in other cultures too, you know, like the Mayans, the Incas, and most definitely the Aztecs. It's cool, huh? I got it right before ICE picked me up. I got my first tattoo when I was 14. Yeah, I know, it's kind of lame. My boy Tommy's sister did it in their basement. She was so fine. I mean, I was always trying to come up with like any stupid excuse to talk to her. And one day I ask her about ink and she tells me she does it on the side, like on the DL. And next thing I know, just bam. I'm not even sure what it means. She said it stands for power, but this dude at culinary school said it looks more like bullshit. Whatever. At least I got to cop a feel. But she was crazy. I would never tell Tommy this, but his sister's straight up psycho. Thank God my taste in women and tats improved drastically over time. Got this when I was 16. This one when I graduated high school. And this one gets me a lot of attention. It's actually gotten me some ass on more than one occasion. But this one is my favorite. It's an Aztec symbol for family. It's ironic when I got it. I never thought in a million years that I'd be taken away from my family, all because of one stupid mistake. One night I was walking home from a party, a little buzzed. All right, I was shit-faced, but it wasn't like I was driving. Cops took us in anyways. People said we were too loud and fucking Tommy took a piss on someone's lawn. So cops told us to spend the night sobering up behind bars. And next thing I know, I'm in immigration detention. Before I knew what hit me, I'm back in fucking El Salvador. I just couldn't take into detention.
This is when I realized immigration detention is designed to break you.
The cold, the smell, the food, I caved. I convinced myself that it might be cool to go to El Salvador, see where I come from, learn shit. But it's been hell, man. No family, no friends. I don't even speak the language. When I got here, I was completely lost and I stood out like a sore thumb and got my ass kicked on the regular. All this ink on my body was a moving target. El Salvador is run by gangs and the gang members all got ink. It's how they identify you. So everyone just assumed I was in a gang. Everyone. I mean, gang members kept trying to figure out who I ran with, or they would try to recruit me, and I don't really speak much Spanish, so eventually they give up and just rob me. It happened over and over again. I've had a gun pointed to my head so many times, I actually got used to it. I just pretended I was like in a long game of endless Russian roulette. Even the cops harassed me. They'd put me aside, shove me around, and make me take off my shirt trying to figure out who I belong to. USA, that's who, motherfucker. And when all this shit gets cleared up, I'm out of here. But if I ever want to get out of here alive, I gotta be careful and play by the rules. Never look anyone in the eyes. Never leave the house without my shades, dark shades. Always wear long sleeve collared shirts to hide my ink. I live on what my parents sent me. I hang where the tourists hang and I eat what the tourists eat. That's the worst part. Pizza Hut, Kentucky Fried Chicken, McDonald's, can you believe it? I would never touch that shit back home, but here, it's my only option if I want to stay alive. I won't be here forever. I've been saving up money to go to culinary school in Italy. Maybe one day I'll be one of those chef celebrities, you know? I'll have my own cooking show, books, merchandise and shit. I'll find my way back home eventually. You see this? It's a compass, always pointing towards here. I'll follow my way back home. If they don't kill me first.
Sounds of gunfire.
What they did to my brother was like an assault. Why was I not notified? I did not even know this was happening because no one called me. Not the court, not INS, not DHS. I knew nothing until I get a call from Haiti.
I learned about Bernadette's brother, Emmanuel, from my colleague, Spalding. Spalding had done a lot of work in Haiti
And Haiti was the reason I do what I do. Growing up in a tight-knit Long Island community, we thought Protestants were exotic. When I got out of college, I decided I want a little life of adventure. So I joined the Peace Corps, which took me to Mali in West Africa and Port-au-Prince in Haiti. Haiti led me to law. Every night I drank Bourbon Court rum and read the comedians, trying my best to be subversive. And one night, I was looking out over from my balcony and I saw a man being dragged outside of a building by a gang. They beat him up pretty bad, forced him onto his knees, then they shot him in the head, execution style. I ran to the woman who ran the house I was boarding in. I said, did you see that? They just shot that man. We need to call the police. The police, call the police. And she said, shut up, you idiot. They are the police. Needless to say, there was never any justice for that man. It radicalized me. I came back to the States to practice law and I started as a criminal defense attorney. But over and over again, I saw the legal system oppressing people, mostly the underprivileged or minorities. Its main goal seemed to be to keep as many young Black men in prison as possible. So I transferred to the immigration unit. I felt so invigorated and hopeful. I thought about all the women in Mali and Haiti I met who just wanted a better life for their kids. Now I could really help them.
No one helped my brother. No one took the time to look at his medical history. It has been several days since I listened to the recording of his court proceedings, and I have been without words.
Judge Lockhart in Oakdale, Louisiana, removal proceedings on this day, January 7th, 2013, in the matter of Mr. Emmanuel Joseph Dominique, case number 0274922. Are you Mr. Emmanuel Joseph Dominique?
Yes.
All right, the respondent is present, not represented today by counsel. The government is represented by Ms. Wortham. And the language today is English. Do you speak English, Mr. Dominique?
Yes, I speak English, I speak Spanish, I speak Creole, I speak French.
My, look at you. How about we do this in English today? That all right with you?
Yes.
Very well. Now, the government has filed an I-2.6.1, which grants the rights to a continuance for preparation. Is that what you want, Mr. Dominique?
Yes, Your Honor.
Very well. I will grant you that right. Court day is set for March 23rd. You'll have the right to an attorney between now and then. Do you need an attorney?
No, Your Honor. I have one, Mr. Leo.
Mr. Leo?
Yes, Your Honor. Leo.
Very well. Court adjourned.
When my brother and I were children in Haiti, he had a friend named Leo. My mother would ask, where have you been all afternoon, huh? And Emmanuel would say, Leo and me went to the ocean. Why are you so late coming home from school? I helped Leo to wash the blackboard. Who are you talking to out there? Leo, Leo this, Leo that. He talked of this Leo all the time, but we never see Leo. As years pass, everyone could see that Emmanuel was not like the other children. He was special. Some days he would walk different, talk different, or sometimes he could get so upset for no reason. So upset that Mama had to tie Emmanuel's hands behind him so that he did not harm himself. And eventually we realized that Leo was not real, and Emmanuel was very sick.
I started working at the immigration unit on September 1, 2001. 10 days later, September 11 happened. Everybody has a story that day. You don't want to hear mine. What's more important is, within weeks, we started to get phone calls from the Muslim community. My brother is missing, husband is gone. More and more people were disappearing. Not from 9/11, but in the weeks afterwards. About a month later, my colleague gets a phone call.
My name is Mohammed Salahuddin. I'm at the Bergen County Detention Center. I need your help, please.
The first day I met with over 30 people. Everyone I defended proved to be totally clean. These guys weren't terrorists. None of them were ever suspected or connected with terrorism, or any crime for that matter. They were picked up because random people were making anonymous calls. As the years passed, they were not just detaining Muslims. They went after Mexicans, Salvadorians, Haitians, anyone brown or black.
This is Judge Joanna Lockhart in Oakdale, Louisiana. Removal proceedings on this day, March 23rd, 2013, in the matter of Mr. Emmanuel Joseph Dominique, case number 0274922. Are you Mr. Emmanuel Joseph Dominique?
I believe so.
Is that a yes or a no?
Yes.
Is your lawyer present, Mr. Dominique? Do you have a lawyer to represent you?
It seems Mr. Leo has disappeared.
Disappeared.
I have tried on numerous occasions to contact him, but he does not respond.
I see.
But I do not need an attorney. I have all the qualifications I need to represent myself. I'm a pastor.
His mental illness showed itself many times in court, but the judge ignored these signs and let my brother hang himself.
Mr. Dominique, do you understand the nature of immigration court? Do you understand what I am saying to you?
Oui, très certainement.
Perhaps you need a translator. Would you like a translator?
Oui, yes, that would be very kind, Your Honor.
Very well. I will grant another continuance.
Despite numerous continuances, my brother failed to complete the cancellation application because of his mental disabilities.
Are you Mr. Emmanuel Joseph Dominique?
Est-ce que vous êtes Monsieur Emmanuel Joseph Dominique?
Oui.
Yes.
Do you acknowledge proper service and receipt of your legal aid form 2 I2.6.1's appeal rights form, notice to appear, and criminal conviction records?
Acceptez-vous le service et la réception appropriée de ces formulaires?
Yes, Your Honor. I have properly received all the forms that you just mentioned.
Et oui, le dit que...
I understood him just fine.
Oh, yes, of course. I'm sorry.
No condemnation criminelle.
However, regarding the criminal conviction...
I read a book while in prison, Muerte mal acquis.
Well, just a
I
moment.
was falsely accused.
Okay, hold on.
I rented a car to drive to Albuquerque.
Wait.
Rented a car to Albuquerque.
I understand what he said. Mr.
And when I crossed the border...
When he crossed the border...
Order in the court.
I'm sorry, I'm getting confused.
I was falsely accused.
Order! Mr. Dominique, you will speak only when I ask you a question, and you will answer my questions clearly and directly. Do you understand?
Est-ce que vous comprenez ce qu'elles disent?
Yes,
Oui.
Your Honor, I understand. I apologize.
Now, do you admit you are not a citizen of the United States, but a citizen of Haiti?
Admettez-vous que vous êtes
I
pas...
came to this country in 1985.
Mr. Dominique,
When?
is that a yes or a no?
Ça va du oui ou non?
Yes, oui.
Yes.
Wonderful. Now, may I take a look at the paperwork you have there?
Yes, but I am not who they say I am.
Is your name Mr. Emmanuel Joseph Dominique?
There is a problem regarding my name. There has been a sabotage.
So you are not Mr. Emmanuel Joseph Dominique?
It was my name.
Yes or no?
As for the criminal convictions, he entered a private property seeking shelter. He also failed to return a rental car, which they charged as theft. Their failure to acknowledge my brother's mental capacity was a violation of his due process rights.
Your Honor, I just want to thank you for your compassion and patience and kindness. If you must deport me, may I request to be deported to either Paris or Canada? I have people there.
You will most likely be sent back to Haiti. Are you afraid to return to Haiti?
Afraid? No, why would I be afraid?
Because it says here that you were threatened on numerous occasions, that you have been physically attacked, and that a gang attempted to kidnap you. Is that true?
I was accused of an illness.
Let me give you another chance. Is there any particular reason why I should not deport you to Haiti?
Mi nombre es...
Wait, are you speaking Spanish? Is he speaking Spanish?
Sí, habla español, ¿por qué?
Mr. Dominique, I provided you with a Haitian-speaking translator at your request. Then you said you don't require one because your English is fine, and now you're speaking Spanish? Look, I don't know what kind of game you think you're playing, but if you do not stop this at once, I will hold you in contempt of court. Do you understand me?
Yes, Your Honor, I understand.
Good. Now, do you have your forms completed, Mr. Dominique?
I was sabotaged.
Are you saying that you do not have your paperwork?
I am saying there is a conspiracy.
I'm going to ask you once more, did you fill out those forms?
Yes.
But you don't have them with you.
No.
Were they taken from you? Were they stolen?
Yes. They came into my cell, they attacked me, and they stole my papers. They will use my name against me and ruin my good name.
I see. And would you like me to grant a continuance so that you can complete those forms again?
They want to sabotage
Mr.
me.
Emmanuel.
Don't touch me.
Order.
By the time they transferred my brother to Louisiana, he was in dire need of urgent medical and psychiatric help, but they claimed they were not equipped to handle his health problems.
The worst travesty of justice I ever saw was the severe lack of medical care in detention centers. I started training students at various universities to interview detainees and report on the conditions. One of these universities had a relationship with a priest from Haiti, who I got to know pretty well. I started asking him about the conditions of prisons there because Haitians who were deported from the US for criminal convictions were put in Haitian jails. It took months of persuading, but he finally agreed to take me to a prison in Jeremy. I've never seen anything like it. One cell was maybe 15 by 15 feet with about 50 guys in it. No electricity, no running water, and a bucket for a toilet. All the men would crowd around this one window getting fresh air. There was a man with blood around his gums because he's malnourished. While I'm talking to him, another man in the back dies. They carried the body right out past me. There were horrible human rights violations everywhere. So we brought a case called Augustine versus Ashcroft. We were trying to argue that deporting lawful permanent residents with criminal records to Haiti violated the Convention Against Torture Act because the conditions of Haitian jails are so deplorable. And we hoped it would be a set of precedent for other countries. It was Judge Alito's last case before he went to the Supreme Court. And he wrote a decision which basically said conditions in those jails are like a slave ship, but they're not intentional. Therefore, it's not torture.
God is with me. Deport me if you want.
Mr.
But
Emmanuel?
you cannot take my
Mr.
name because God
Emmanuel.
is with me.
Order! Mr. Emmanuel, Joseph Dominique, did I just hear you say you want to be deported?
Yes, Your Honor. Please deport me.
This is your final decision?
Yes.
Well, then I will grant that request. I hereby order Mr. Emmanuel Joseph Dominique to be deported back to Haiti effective immediately. Case closed, court adjourned.
No one ever called me or my mother. It was not until my aunt in Haiti called me that I found out Emmanuel was in a private facility in Port-au-Prince.
By the time I discovered any of this, it was too late.
2 weeks ago, he was beaten and robbed by someone in the facility. We want to remove him from that place, but for now we have no other choice. Mon petit frère.
This is the pit. We are at the bottom.
Rule of law is supposed to help people, protect people. But everywhere I look, it's being used to oppress.
Says the oppressor to the oppressees.
Sorry?
Don't you work for DHS?
Oh, no, it's not what you think. I'm still an immigration advocate, but all the attention I got made me a liability. I was hurting the people I was advocating for. Because I was pissed so many people off. Now, after I lost my job, my daughter was diagnosed with a pretty severe illness. DHS was the only place that would hire me.
How can you work for them?
I think about my kid. Isn't that what we all did? What our parents did? Isn't that why we're all here? It's why we're all here, right?
It's not the same.
We all want what's best for our kids. We're not all bad. And you're not all angels.
Is that how you sleep at night?
Who says I sleep at night? I see detainees, mothers and fathers, coming in with the same applications that I used to file on their behalf. But now I'm on the other side. I suppose we all have to justify what we do, even if it seems like a contradiction. But now that I've seen both sides, I realize I can still help those in genuine need by weeding out anyone trying to take advantage. For example, the Asylum Program. I think the Asylum Program is the crown jewel of all our immigration programs. It's the recognition of our moral and international obligations to protect people who need protection. Children forced into abusive labor, women escaping armies of rapists. As an attorney for DHS, I have an opportunity to do right by them. In many instances, I do. But when I encounter people who don't qualify or deserve asylum trying to work the system, it enrages me. Not just because it's a manipulation of the rule of law, but on a practical matter, I saw it as a bigger problem. Every time a fraud was uncovered, I knew that on the hills of Congress, people would begin to question the Asylum Program. Not just question, they'd regard it as a joke. And they would start to regard all of our immigration programs as a joke. Sooner they'd be thinking that TPS was a joke, DACA was a joke, habeas corpus. Where do you think this all started?
Where does it end? Where does it end? I've been an ICE officer for over 10 years now, so I suppose technically we're on the same team, but lately, man, I don't know. About a month after Trump took office, we had a meeting, all the officers in my unit, and my supervisor starts the meeting by saying, it's an exciting time to be a part of ICE, just like that. Like, hey, the McRib is back. That's the moment it really sunk in. We are under a completely new order. I've been working in the federal immigration since Clinton, and this is actually the first time in my career that I have trouble sleeping at night. And believe me, I was not a fan of Obama. It sucked to be micromanaged like that. But now it's like there are no rules. There is no protocol. I've actually heard officers say, we're finally free. Free to what? To be judge and jury? That's not our job.
No, our job as ICE officers is to enforce the law, period. If you're in this country illegally, in violation of the law, you are subject to enforcement action. Under Obama, there were all these lines in the sand with regard to who our targets were, all these gray areas. It made our job unnecessarily complicated and confusing for all involved. Trump made it simple. Enforce the law as written.
Okay, well, some of my colleagues seem to think that's open to interpretation. These people still have rights. I have seen abuses of power that are illogical, unreasonable. The other day, a fellow officer asked, why should I call an interpreter? Why don't they just speak English?
Oh, give me a break with that. Look, I'm not saying that didn't happen. There are bad apples in any organization, but I'm sick of this myth that ICE is made up of a bunch of blonde hair, blue-eyed neo-Nazis. My dad is from Mexico. Here in LA, 40% of ICE officers are Latino. Do we think Mexicans are bad hombres? Hell no.
What about the other 60%? What do they think?
I'm not responsible for every fucked up thing that comes out of the mouth of some bitter old agent who's about to retire and doesn't give a shit what anybody thinks.
But it's not just the older veteran agents who say things like that. It's the young guys. That's what really scares me. So many young people with so much power and so much contempt, and consequently, we're not targeting the criminals and scumbags. We're targeting the people most vulnerable, kids. Now there's this push to go after young adults who are turning 18. Kids, they're in high school, for God's sake, getting ready for prom and SATs and college applications. But because they came here as unaccompanied minors when they were children, now we're supposed to pick them up, put them in detention, and begin deportation proceedings. They're fucking kids.
I don't want to ruin some kid's life. I don't want to separate families. It's not our intention to make people suffer. Our goal is to enforce the law. If an 18-year-old steals a car, the sheriff doesn't say, oh, graduation's tomorrow, we'll let it slide. If a man attempts murder, but he's got a wife and 5 kids, LAPD is not like, oh, but he has a family. So why is it so different for us? I'm sick of being vilified by people who don't know what they're talking about because they don't have all the facts. We don't just round up people like the boogeyman. A lot of times we grant them a voluntary departure order, which gives them time to make arrangements, say their goodbyes, and leave on their own. And if they don't, it doesn't matter how many years have gone by. They still have that deportation order. So what if they have a clean record? So what if they own a home, make an honest living, pay taxes? The 9/11 terrorists all had clean records, but they came here illegally and they did a lot of harm. And those ankle monitors, that's not a punishment designed to humiliate you. That's a generous compromise that allows you to remain with your family. When we do raids, we know there are people with those deportation orders and or criminal convictions. These people know they're breaking the law. They just don't think they'll get caught. And after 10 plus years, they feel entitled to be here. But no one, as far as I'm concerned, is above the law. We get such a bad rep, but I never hear anyone talk about the good we do. We just had this one guy from El Salvador subject to immediate deportation. But he says his daughter's about to graduate from high school. It would mean the world to her for him to be there. And we granted him that request. But no, mainstream media paints us to be these evil monsters.
Wait, since when do we pay attention to what the media says about us? And how did our job become so political? Now we're endorsing presidential candidates. I know immigration has always been a political issue, but I felt like ICE lived somewhere in the middle. I really believed that. I had faith in what my superiors and colleagues would do, what was appropriate, without bringing their political leanings into it. Now, I don't have faith in anything.
I never had faith in this system. I learned a long time ago this system wasn't designed for people like me. My family emigrated from Eritrea back in 1981. We were refugees, not asylum seekers. There's a difference. I had a green card, took my first step and said my first word in this country. Grew up with 8 siblings on the south side of Chicago. And in the late 80s, early 90s, if you lived in the projects, you eventually had some contact with the criminal justice system. I was a stupid teen who did dumb shit like jumping the turnstiles, buying Lucy's. I got kicked out of the house when I was 13 and lived in a group home for 3 years. After that, I was homeless. So I spent a lot of time in the library, especially when it was cold. I'd spend hours reading book after book. When I was homeless, reading was the only thing that gave me hope. I knew somehow that education would save my life. One day, I tried to get a library card, but they wouldn't give me one because I had no address. So I started selling books, on like discreetly borrowing. I always brought them back. I just saved time and energy by skipping the whole checkout process. One day, I got caught. Now, I'm not saying, I'm not, because now, I'm not saying that what I did was right, but they charged me with a federal crime. See, they had to indicate the amount of books that they were worth for the police report, but we didn't know. They were old library books, and this was long before you could just Google stuff like that. So they came up with some random amount. Literally, they just wrote in a number, but that number exceeded some kind of limit. And since the library is a government building, technically, I was stealing government property, which is a federal crime. So now my record says federal felony. Imagine how that looks on paper. I've been better off stealing from Barnes and Noble, right? That conviction had me scared straight. Got my shit together, went back to school. And that's when I found out I wasn't a citizen. I always just assumed that I was. My parents got naturalized around the time I was homeless, and my siblings were all born here. Guess I just fell through the cracks, but I didn't let it stop me. I started out with community college in Chicago. I studied political science, immigration law, and global economics. I loved it, and I thrived. I went on to grad school and got a full ride to George Washington University. Education was the major intervention in my life. School not only changed me, it healed me. Maybe if I was someone else from somewhere else, That would be the end of my story, you know? Misguided teen from the hood turns his life around, but my story took a different turn. In 2003, I applied for citizenship and was denied. They looked at that conviction, federal felony, and said, absolutely not. Now, on one hand, I'm invited to study at one of the top academic institutions in the country, George Washington University, for fuck's sake. How much more American can you get? And on the other hand, I'm lacking moral character. That's what the form said. It's an actual category, poor moral character. But I still have my green card, and more important, I have my education. No one could take that away from me. By now, I have my master's. I was working, paying taxes, living the American dream. Then one day I'm walking home and there are cops in the front of my building. Some guy got mugged. I knew the dude. He was an addict who leaned on corners, you know? I'd even given him money in the past, but now he was saying I did it. And the cops took his word. They just arrested me, no questions asked. Soon as I got in, the guys in the cell with me start asking where I'm from, do I have papers? I said, I got a green card. They said,
watch out, man. ICE has an office right here in Rikers. If you got a record, anything at all, they can deport you. Get out of here as fast as you can.
Thank God for those guys. I got the fuck out as soon as I could. My criminal case was dismissed, but now I'm a sitting duck. Any day, anytime, I can just show up at my door and I won't be able to stop them. This is my life now. I accept it. I refuse to live in fear.
What do we want?
Justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
When I came to at the hospital, there were 20 armed officers waiting outside my door. I thought, what could I have possibly done to deserve this? And I realized it was because of all of you outside protesting in support of me. As soon as the hospitals released me, ICE took me to the Chrome Detention Center in Florida. I was released on January 29, 2018. 24 hours later, I was in the belly of the beast, sitting at the State of the Union address, imagining sitting in that space, having to remain silent while 45 told lie after lie. But my silence was an act of defiance. It was an act of defiance when Congresswoman Velasquez invited me to be her +1. And it was an act of defiance when I sat there, forcing Congress to look at me, to reckon with me. What do we want?
Justice!
And do we want it?
Now!
Now is not soon enough. It's funny. I've always been a dreamer. When I was a little boy, I dreamed that I'd grow strong enough to fight back when my father beat us. I used to dream about graduating from an Ivy League university. When I started acting, I dreamed I'd be so rich I could take care of my mother forever. Take care of her the way she took care of me. I'm the reason she came to America. I have sickle cell, and if we stayed in Guinea, I would never get the treatment I desperately needed. My mom risked everything to get us here, and it was up to me to guard her secret no matter what. She said if anyone found out we were undocumented, they might send me and her back. My brothers and sisters who were all born there would be left behind. What would happen to them? What would happen to my mother in Guinea? My father would kill her. And if he didn't, the Fulani tribe would. And what about me? Without medication and treatment, I could die. All of this kept spinning around in my head. Acting was the only thing that brought me peace. The first time I took an acting class, I knew I found my calling. I decided this is how I would save my family. This is how I would come out of hiding. You see, when you were undocumented, it's like you don't exist, no trail. But having my name in lights and print would change that. Amadou Suella, American actor. My senior year of high school, I was a finalist for the Posse Scholarship, $250,000 for a college education. My dream of going to an Ivy League school were coming true. But it fell apart before the final interview because I didn't have a social security number and I was afraid they discovered the truth about me. So instead, after high school, I worked a lot of odd jobs, I paid under the table, and I auditioned as much as I could and started building up my acting resume. When I got cast in my first leading role, my director kept saying, "Find your truth." Something clicked. I realized I was destined to be an actor because it's all about the truth. I won an award for that performance. I made copies of all the press I got, photos, even copied the award certificate to send back to my grandfather in Guinea. But he passed away before it reached him. I fell into a deep depression and it affected my physical health too. I wound up in the hospital. This can't be it, I thought. This can't be the end. Then one night, my grandfather spoke to me in my dream. He said, "Keep fighting, tell the truth." So I did. After I was released from the hospital, I started with my siblings. Even they thought I was born here. Then a few friends, then I finally decided to apply for a green card. They said I had a strong case because of my accomplishments. Lawyers said I was a dream case, literally and figuratively. I reached out to my fellow truth tellers, my artistic community. They rallied around me, writing letters, signing advocates. No matter what my legal status was, regardless of whatever label was forced on me, I had all the documentation I needed to prove what I'd known all along. Notarized and sworn before God in a court of law, the truth. I exist. I matter. I could finally see the light. And just when I thought it was over,
January 20th, 2017, Donald Trump is sworn in as the 45th President of the United States of America.
January 25th, 2017, Trump signs Interior Enforcement Memo that eliminates existing deportation enforcement priorities,
making nearly the entire undocumented population a priority for deportation.
No matter the circumstances.
No matter the length of time in this country.
No one is safe.
This summer, the Trump administration enacts a new law that will make it nearly impossible for illegal immigrants to receive public assistance.
Like Medicare.
Or food stamps.
Even in the midst of a pandemic.
You either fend for yourself or get deported. Either way, your kids go hungry.
We're fucked. You too, by the way. We are all fucked.
In the last 10, 20 years, I've encountered so many of these families, hundreds of people like Melita, Inez, Warren, Abraham, mothers, fathers, child after child after child after child, devastated by this cruel, illogical system, a system that uses the term chain migration as if it's this devious, menacing crime.
You know what we used to call chain migration? Family unity.
A system who ordered the deportation of a mother and father and their two kids who were born in El Salvador while their American-born 15-year-old daughter would be left here alone. It took me 5 years to get that order reversed. Meanwhile, this 15-year-old girl was forced to hold up her entire family. I mean, can you imagine the pressure that puts on a child? 5 years.
She's not alone.
That's right. Her case is not anomalous. Cases like that, like these, happen all the time.
And nobody knows. Sure, you may know some things about detainees, asylum seekers, undocumented, whatever you want to call them. And they have names. They all have a story. And it drove me crazy that no one knew about Warren or Melita, Emmanuel or Freddie. No one knew what was happening to them right under our nose in our country. I thought if I could find someone willing to listen, not to me, but to them. I wanted someone to tell their stories in their own voices. And I met France-Luce.
I'll never forget when Claudia asked if I would share these stories. I remember you telling me these stories play over and over in your head.
In my head. I get to work and the calls keep coming in. My caseload increases day by day, hour by hour, and they're essentially all the same. Please.
I just want to be with my family.
When I first heard their stories, I thought I know these people. I am these people. That could have been me. My parents came here to get away from an increasingly dangerous dictatorship, first in Haiti, then in the Congo. Your stories made me realize what it was like for my parents. They were younger than I am today in a new country with 4 kids. They had to learn the language, learn the culture, and learn how to navigate a system designed to oppress them. It was hard, but we were lucky because it was a different time. We got green cards and eventually we all became US citizens. My dad even worked at Chrome Detention Center. He was teaching English, but he also helped detainees with their paperwork pro bono. He'd take their paperwork home and spend hours doing all he could. And then when they got released from detention, he'd help them find jobs and homes. He was even awarded a humanitarian award for the work he did. And yet I never knew about any of this until I met Claudia. You see, she introduced me to a colleague who also worked at Chrome, and he remembered my father. Small world. He remembered what my father did and what a kind, brave, and giving man my father was. These people here, they remind me of him. So much to offer with so much to lose, but still willing to fight. Fighting for the right to know where their families are being held, fighting to raise their kids from thousands of miles away, fighting for their lives in countries run by gangs and corruption with their hope and humor still intact. And fighting for the lives of so many others while their own futures are so uncertain.
I could be gone tomorrow, tonight.
God, that would make me crazy.
I try not to think about it.
How?
Same way you don't, I guess. I mean, we all know it's happening. We see the news, we're here, but most people don't think about it beyond that. Not like we do.
Every day, every minute. You don't have to.
But we do. We have to start thinking about it every day. And we have to start doing something about it, no matter how small, every day. Or else we're fucked. Because this system is seriously
cruel. How do we live in a country that has created an immigration system that is so extraordinarily cruel? There's no policy reason for inflicting this misery on people. It's just cruel.
But you know, oppressive systems like this needs participants, both willing and unwilling. We have the power to dismantle it. Let's stop thinking about it every now and then, thinking about what we might do, what we're going to do. Let's just fucking do it.
End of play. Thank you, cast. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you, France-Luce.
Thank you.
Thanks, France-Luce.
Thank you, Pat.
Thanks, everybody. Wonderful job,
Oh,
everybody.
Great working with everyone.
So we have a few panelists here, which I'll introduce in just a moment. We have Judy Rabinovitz, who commissioned this play several years ago and has been developing the play with me. The character that Kathleen Chalfant played so beautifully is based on Judy and another attorney by the name of Claudia Slavinsky. So Judy, if you want to say hello. Judy is the director of the Immigration Rights Program at the ACLU. I think you're
Actually,
muted.
that's not my title. I'm
Okay, tell us your title.
I worked at the and thank you so much for putting this together. For the whole thing getting organized. I sort of had felt a few months ago that it was kind of going to be, I didn't know what was going to happen with it because of the way that we're all dealing with this coronavirus. It didn't seem like there'd be a way to to get it out. Anyway, I've been working at the ACLU Immigrants' Rights Project for many years, and I like the character that France-Luce has in there. I just felt like these stories, I just could not just stand all these stories and have them not being heard. And so I then found France-Luce to see if she would help write a play about this. So anyway, the only thing that I want to say, there's other people who are going to talk a little bit, is just, you know, I've obviously all these issues are going on still now, but there are also other issues in terms of COVID that are happening as well, and which other people are going to talk about. You know, those include just all the ways that immigrants in particular are being affected by the COVID virus and by the administration's policies around it. And so we see immigrants in detention, which other people are going to talk about, who are basically facing death sentences because of the conditions in there. And then we see also just immigrant communities being devastated because of the conditions there, that they're just much more likely to get the disease and to die. We see immigrant workers who are in meatpacking plants, you know, where it's just a death sentence, and other kinds of jobs that immigrants have to do that are sort of the essential workers, whether they're delivery people, but so they're not able to shelter at home and they're more likely to be at risk. And then those people who have lost their jobs, they don't have the safety net that that other people do. They're not getting unemployment in most cases, and healthcare isn't available to them. So that's all that I'm going to say, which is just that, you know, there's a lot of issues going on now, and other people can talk about them. And hopefully there'll be also somebody here who can talk about what people can do to connect to this, because there are a lot of groups that are working on these issues, and there are ways to connect and to try to help. So, but thank you all for listening in, and thank you to all the participants in this show.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you. And thank you for helping to create this. So I want to introduce next Amy Cohen, who is the co-founder and executive director of an organization by the name of Every Last One. So Amy, if you could just tell us a little bit about Every Last One, what you do, and just a little bit about how the last few months have been with regard to the work that you do.
Thank you so much. And I really want to thank all of you for bringing to life these stories that are so critical. And France-Luce and Judy in particular for bringing to life these stories, because I think that although there's never enough news on immigration, the population of children who are left destitute and orphaned by the sudden collection and deportation of parents is something that people just don't talk about. And we really have communities all over the country where that's the case. I'm a child psychiatrist. I initially got into this work being asked to do interviews in particular of parents who had been separated from their children during zero tolerance when a lawsuit was being brought. And I became very involved then with the Flores Settlement Agreement attorneys and started going into child detention centers. And through my work, both on a granular level and working directly with children, and also on a larger, level in terms of some of the legal actions that were being brought both by the ACLU and by Flores, I came to feel that I really needed to bring things together to address the issue of children being held in detention. At the time that we started Every Last One, that I founded Every Last One, we had about 15,000 children in immigrant detention in the United States. And their releases were being delayed by all manner of things, none of which really made any sense, because just as I felt when I sat across in Port Isabel prison from the parents who'd had their children taken away, when I sat across from the children in these detention centers, it kept coming back to me that cruelty and the pain that they were experiencing was not a byproduct of policy, it was the purpose of the policy. And this is an administration that is pretty much admitted that causing pain, in particular to children and to families, is a reasonable means of deterring people from coming to this country. So what we've seen is more and more children now no longer being placed as much in detention, but instead being sent to places like Mexico. So we've seen a decrease in the detained population of children, which the government advertises as a success on their part in terms of releasing children. They haven't, if you look at the average time that children spend in detention, that has not decreased. But what has happened is that instead, the children who would have been admitted, the families who would have been admitted, are now being sent to Mexico to remain in some of the most dangerous cities in the world. Cities that are considered by our State Department to be Category 4, equivalent to Syria, war zones, equivalent to Iraq, equivalent to Afghanistan. That is where we are forcing people to wait when they come to this country for asylum. And that includes young women and young children. For 30 years, I've been working with highly traumatized populations of children, including in places like South Sudan. And I have never in my life seen children as traumatized as the children in the what they call the euphemistically the Migrant Protection Program, the MPP program. Children who've been kidnapped with their parents, forced to watch while their parents were tortured, sometimes for days. It's really extraordinary. And these children, these parents have then been left with the unholy bifurcated choice of either keeping their children in a very dangerous situation or separating from them by sending them across to the United States on their own. So my organization, in addition to expediting the release of children from ORR facilities, started a program called the Family Bridge Project, which was a way to keep parents who are in Mexico connected to children who they've sent across the bridges on their own. And also to inform those parents about what was likely to happen to those children if they did in fact choose to send them across. So we started getting lots and lots of calls from parents who were desperate, who wanted to send their children across. And we really didn't take a position on whether they should or shouldn't, but we really worked with them to make that decision in an informed way. And then when if they did send their children across, we worked with sponsors and we worked to get those children out. What we discovered is that those children who came from Mexico fleeing violence, which was in some cases even worse than the violence, the death threats that they were facing in their own countries, these children were being discriminated against within the child detention system in the United States. And their releases were being either held up or stopped altogether because ICE was intervening and saying that these children were going to be deported, and that they shouldn't be released if they were going to be deported. So attorneys went to court about a month ago around the issue of how to deal with children in detention facilities around the COVID crisis. And it was very important to me to work with those attorneys to push for these children from MPP to be able to get out of detention and not be held in these dangerous facilities, as all of them are. And so the judge in the Flores court, in fact, ordered that these children do need to be released unless they're due to be deported within a day, hours or a day. What we started then to see was a sudden flood of child deportations. What we have now seen are over 1,000 children, unaccompanied, on their own, being deported with no notice to parents, no capacity to make a phone call, back to countries where often their lives are in danger, being deported unlawfully. Many of them do not have active deportation orders. Their cases are either in process or under appeal. Nonetheless, they're loaded onto planes and they're sent off to countries. Their parents are frantic, they don't know where they are. Many of these parents are in Mexico. These children arrive in these countries, there's no one to greet them. Often there's no one to care for them. So this is what our country has become. Our country has become a place that tortures children. And you know, it may seem like hyperbole to say that, but you sit with these children and you see what has been done to them, and it's not an exaggeration. We are a country that deliberately tortures children so that we can tear out the hearts of their parents.
Yeah.
I'm
sorry. I think when we hear this, so many of us feel powerless. And so I'm wondering, like, if we go to your website, every last one, Will we find ways where we can help, whether it's donations or I don't know if you need volunteers? Is that something you would recommend for us to do now?
Absolutely. We get calls every day. We love and value our volunteers who work with us, who work directly with our parents. We do everything from helping to get people transported out of places like Nuevo Laredo, where they have been kidnapped and assaulted, to finding children, tracking them down, to working to get sponsors for children who may not have families, to getting the sponsorship process going, to working with attorneys. We always need volunteers. Everylastone.org is our website. There's a lot of information on there. We have a library on the website, which has lots of information, research, articles on various things pertaining to children affected by the immigration system. We also have a gallery of testimonials by children themselves that are legal testimonials, their words, and their drawings as well. So
thank you. Thank you so much, Amy. Thank you for being here. And again, that's everylastone.org. That's one place you can help. Our next guest, I've been rehearsing your name. I hope I say it right. Ahilan Aralananthan. Did I say it right, Ahilan? Are you there?
You did say it right.
Great. Can you just tell us briefly what you do and your insights? I know that you've been very involved with what's been happening in the last few months, correct?
Yes, I'm also an attorney at the ACLU here in Los Angeles. I'm a senior counsel at the ACLU of Southern California, and have been very involved in the immigration detention work for a long time. Actually, the person who taught me the most about immigration detention work is Judy Rabinovitz. And I want to thank Judy so much for taking the time to bring these stories to light. It was very moving, extremely moving play, especially if you've done this work for a long time. And thank you so much too. Thank you so much. And to all the people who put this together. It was very, very powerful. I really profoundly moved by it. I could talk about a lot of things, but I know it's been a long time. I mean, the main thing I would say with respect to what's going on now and COVID is that like nursing homes and like cruise ships, places where people are forced to live together, very close together, and shower together and bunk in very large rooms with large numbers of people in close proximity are hotbeds for the coronavirus. And when you have staff and guards and other people who are going out into the community where the virus is spreading and coming back in, it's just a matter of time before it comes into those places. And now I think prisons and jails are becoming comparable to nursing homes in terms of the size of the outbreaks that are happening there. And in immigration detention, it's really scary, because as your play illustrates really well, immigration detention is just prison by another name. And people are held in the same kinds of conditions in those places. And ICE, unfortunately, the federal agency that runs the system, was already, before the pandemic, really bad at medical care. And there's just a number of massive problems with the provision of medical care for sort of complicated reasons that I won't kind of, bother with going into now. And so predictably, we have now started to see outbreaks in immigration detention centers. They're now, I think, 50 immigration detention centers or something, 52 or something that have outbreaks in them. The first person, it was very sad actually, the first person was our client in a case in San Diego who passed away from COVID just a few days ago. And so we've been, it's extraordinary numbers, something like 30 cases or something that the ACLU has filed all over the country, because you have to sort of go facility by facility to challenge the practices. And I've been involved in the case here in Adelanto, California, which is the largest immigration detention center in the West Coast. And just trying to get them to release people and to stop bringing in new people, to implement the things that we're all doing, 6-foot social distancing, and proper, adequate use of sanitation and masks and things like that. I will say one other thing, which I found weirdly hopeful. I mean, it's terrifying, and I have to say the pressure of doing this kind of work is almost worse than the things that we've done in the past, because you feel like, you know, you're litigating these cases to try and get people out, and you know this disease is terrifying because we're sitting in our homes doing court hearings on Zoom because it's too dangerous even to go into the courthouse, and you're trying to get this. It's really, you know, it's a very pressure-filled kind of work. At the same time, the pandemic has caused immigration detention numbers as a whole, the average daily population, to drop to numbers unseen since before the Obama administration, because enforcement has massively decreased just in the last, you know, several weeks. It hasn't stopped completely, but it's decreased a lot. And courts have ordered a lot of people, I think by our last count, I don't want to get the number wrong, but dozens and dozens of people, I think it's maybe already in the hundreds, but I'm not sure, that the courts have ordered that those people should be sent home to stay at home during the pandemic, because it's not necessary for them to be locked up given the risk associated with this. And so I think in an environment that we'll be coming into, where the population is massively dropped, the federal government will have no money, you know, we're very short of money, and we'll have seen that so many people can be allowed to stay at home. I just wonder if this might be a political moment. You know, we've been looking for this moment for 20, or more than 20, since 1996. You know, we've been looking for this political moment to make these very obvious, simple points that your play makes so powerfully. And I wonder if now the confluence of events is such that it may be possible. So we'll see. You know, to do this work, you have to be optimistic and hopeful, and sometimes it's really hard. But I am hopeful that maybe this is a moment where people will see the complete cruelty and irrationality of the system in a way that they have not in the past. The very last thing I'll say for support, you know, the ACLU, as much work as we're doing, and we are a large organization, we can always use more support. We are strapped and exhausted. So, you know, that's definitely an organization you can consider donating to. Another one for just people who are not sort of legally trained, but who want to work to help people in immigration detention in particular, is Freedom for Immigrants. It's like a citizen group. It started primarily, I think, as a religious organization, but it's not at all like that, limited to that now. And they do visits and letter writing. They do a lot of really great advocacy as well. So you can look that up. It's just freedomforimmigrants.org. And they have chapters all over the country to try and do support work for people in immigration detention centers all around the country. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So that's freedomforimmigrants.org. Mm-hmm. And of course, the ACLU. Thank you so much, Ahilan. It's an honor. So one last guest, Mark Dow, who is the author of American Gulag Inside U.S. Immigration Prisons, who also knew my father. So thank you for being here. Welcome, Mark.
Thanks, France-Luce, and thanks everyone for tuning in and for sticking around for so long. It's an impressive play because it covers so much of what's going on in the detention world. And I'm also very indebted to Ahilan and to Judy for what I've learned about immigration detention over the years. I'll just say a couple of very brief things. I know it's late, touching on the past, on the present, and on the future that some people are asking about. I knew France-Luce's father, Franz. I didn't know him well, but as she mentioned, by a kind of extraordinary coincidence, 30 years ago, when I was teaching at the Chrome Detention Center at the same time that France Benson was. We were both working for the school system, I should say, for the public school system, not for the immigration service. And as a teacher there, without understanding the scale or scope of the detention system at all, I was very struck at the time by how isolated the detainees were, how invisible they were by intention, and also the level of intimidation, even at the level of something that came up in the play of guards trying to convince teachers that the detainees, who to us were our students, that they were dangerous. Later on, I would have a chance when I was writing, I worked briefly at the Haitian Refugee Center in Miami, which was when I first connected with Judy Rabinovitz. And then later I would go on to start interviewing a lot of people, not only detainees, but people working in the detention world, including guards. And one of the things that I was told very frankly was about the way in which guards themselves were brainwashed to think of even an asylum seeker as a dangerous criminal, when there was literally no basis for thinking that. And even today, to skip ahead, Ahilan mentioned that a number of people have been released from detention by judicial order. And as of just a few days ago, ICE has a new section on its website where it mentions the judicial releases, and it makes a point of listing what it claims are the worst crimes that they have committed, just to make sure that that scare tactic is in place, even when a judge has not only approved, but ordered the release of that person. Very briefly, something happening in the present that was also touched on in France-Luce's play. In addition just to the dangers of COVID-19 right now in the detention centers, where there are now something like just under 28,000 people as we speak and as we sit here, there's a lot of internal resistance. And in a lot of cases, that's just detainees demanding better medical care and better precautions. And unfortunately, the detainees are being met all across the country with violent reactions from guards, often guards employed by private prison companies. It's happening in Adelanto in California that Ahilan mentioned, in Calexico, California, in Mississippi, in Texas, in Louisiana, in Bristol County, Massachusetts, where we're seeing peaceful protests met with rubber bullets, with so-called beanbag bullets, with pepper spray, with solitary confinement, and with detainees being cut off from their means of communication with families and lawyers, which would be significant enough, but is even more significant now because visitation has been curtailed. So just to skip ahead, I know people want to know what they can do. The ACLU and Freedom for Immigrants, I just want to add my voice that those are just two key organizations that are worth supporting. All elected officials now understand the issue of immigration detention and the dangers that are there right now because of COVID-19. So any elected official that you feel comfortable calling is now hearing that they should weigh in on that. And you won't be calling in a vacuum. So it's worth doing that. And the last thing I'll mention, and I'll end with this, is that I know that there's a lot of discussion about lesser evil and whether Obama era detention policies, how bad they were. There's no comparison to what's happening today. And the judges around the country who are making decisions about these cases that people like the ACLU were bringing to get people released, those judges are appointed by presidents. And so we'll have a choice pretty soon about which president is going to be appointing judges who will be in those positions soon. So I'll just end with that. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. Yes, November. I can't wait for November. Thank you so much, all of the panelists and the actors. If you want to take yourself off video, just so we can all give you one last round of applause. Cast, do you want to come on video? They're all hiding. There you are. Thank you all so much. And I just want to say the names of those organizations again. Of course, the ACLU, Every Last One, Families for Immigration, and is that all of them? I feel like I'm missing one.
Freedom for Immigrants.
Freedom for Immigrants, thank you. And there's also a New Sanctuary Coalition, who the character that Felix played, Ravi, is the executive director of, and that is an organization based in New York that does a lot of on-the-ground work, and they're always looking for volunteers. That's New Sanctuary Coalition. And as Stephen Sachs mentioned, we have been working at the Fountain Theater on an arts education program around this play. We want to take this play into schools, and the idea is that I will teach students how to write a play based on interviews and get them to engage in their own communities about issues that they're passionate about. So once we're into a new normal and we can open up the theater again, that's something that we'll be working on. So the Fountain Theater would love your support, and please support all of these organizations. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, actors, everyone, for making this possible, panelists. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Judy Rabinovitz, for making this play happen. She reached out to me several years ago and has really been committed to giving this play a life and making sure it continues. And we want as many people to see the play as possible because it's important. So thank you all. Have a good night. I appreciate you for sticking around so late. Have a great night. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.